Good evening, everybody. This is Robbie with Hyak. I also have Neil from Hyak here, as well as Matt. I can let them say hi real fast.
Hi,
Hello.
this is yep. I'm gonna overtalk everybody. We knew that was gonna happen. This is Neil with Hyak.
Hey, this is Matt from Hyak.
So tonight I am going to run through kind of a presentation specifically geared for parents. We spent a little bit of time this afternoon going over one more designed for middle schoolers. And so this one is, like I said, specifically designed for parents. And so some of the topics we talk about in this one are just a little bit different than the ones we talked about with the kids. And just so happens that Neil, Matt, and I all are parents, of course, too. All happen to work in kind of the technology space and have some of our own kind of personal concerns and family concerns and how we handle some of these situations. So we're going to kind of use this presentation here from the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. This is a curriculum that we can get access to kind of teach, but we'll also kind of intermix in some of our own kind of life experiences in with this too. Part of this meeting, you'll also see a little Q&A section in there. And so you'll be able to ask any questions that might pop up there, and Neil will probably be able to grab them and help kind of moderate those while I'm going through these. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to toss them in the Q&A, and we'll try to get them addressed. So if I can find the right button here. So we kind of talked a little bit about our intro. So one of the things that's a big difference between everybody that'll be on the call right now and our kids are the differences between what some folks call a digital immigrant and a digital native. And so most of us grew up without computers in the house. I know specifically for Neil and I both, we can remember the first time we got a dial-up modem and the first time we had a computer, and some of the very first, BBS systems on the internet. And we were both kind of grew up without technology in the house and made that transition. But for all of our kids, they're in a little bit different world where they have grown up with the internet completely around them and really ubiquitous cell phones and network access from everywhere that they go. And that is just a little bit different than how all of us grew up for the most part. And it presents kind of a unique set of challenges that some of us aren't quite accustomed to. And so one of the things we talked with the kids about this afternoon is really kind of what happens when you post something online and it's going to stay there really for almost ever. If you post something to Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or wherever, even if the kid decides they want to delete it, it was a bad idea or whatever, it's possible somebody took a screenshot of it, or it's really going to be backed up on Facebook or Instagram. It's, they're never really quite deleted. And so one of the things that we focused on a little bit is that concept of when you put something out online that really everybody in the world can see it and it's probably going to be there forever. I have a couple statistics in this particular presentation for you guys some of them are scare tactics, just trying to help everybody understand some of the realities that their kids face. But 30% of kids 18 to 14 already are using the internet in a way that they don't think their parents would approve. And so you'll see a whole bunch of surveys in here that were done with actual kids, and some data points that were done with their parents. But so a third of the kids in that age range are already doing something online that they don't think their parents would approve of. And, that could be something as simple as, kind of snaking a game that their parents told them they can't play, or maybe playing, Call of Duty instead of something a little bit more benign, or something with more kind of blood and violence than a simple puzzle game or something. So most of our kids are already being exposed to situations online that we want to try to help prevent them from having to get exposed to at too young an age. So a lot of stuff has changed with COVID and distance learning and kids' exposure to online tools, things that, a year ago, we wouldn't have even thought would be normal. But now, even this first bullet point, chatting with and using webcams with strangers, while their class isn't exactly strangers, kids have become a lot more comfortable using webcams and computers as a communication tool, where that just has never really been in the past. And so one of the things that we are going to have to try to do as parents with our kids is help educate them a little bit on some of that communication that's kind of okay and communication that might not really be okay. some kids, we talk about borrowing parents' credit cards here and making poor decisions with personal information. Where we get personal family pressure is when the kids want to go buy a game on a tablet, or they want to, Fortnite, of course, is the big one right now, and how they want to just be able to borrow that and borrow a card. Luckily, as kind of some of these tools mature, a lot of the parental controls are changing. And so how you can have Google and Apple both do this is have some type of shared family payment method where a child can request to have an app installed and a parent can kind of hit a button and hit approve. Neil, do you remember the Apple tool? I can't remember. On the Google side, it's Google Family Link, but I can't remember if Apple has a specific name for theirs.
It's family sharing on Apple, where you can create sub accounts with the email addresses and then choose which ones are children and their age range and stuff.
Did you guys use that when the kids were growing up to kind of manage some of their expectations?
My two oldest ones, I didn't use it on because they were, they're 22 now. My youngest is 16, and so for the last couple of years, probably from 13 to just recently, I used that for her, and she would authorize app purchases, whether they're free and or paid. She didn't have access to the credit card or my account or my PIN, but she could request a purchase and then I could approve it. And the other one that Apple has, I'm sure that Android has something similar, is called Screen Time. And Apple will share a screen time report of which applications the child was using the most, how long they were on them for, et cetera, et cetera. So it was pretty handy to see which platforms people were on the most, or they were on the most.
Gotcha. Yeah, one of the things that's kind of becoming more normal, and it's not necessarily something that some people hesitate to talk about, but just in general, when it comes to educating kids about cyber crime and cyber hygiene and basically how to be safe online, I have had other similar conversations about parents, like with basic sex ed, has always been kind of a hot button topic, and what age is right and when do you start having those conversations with your kids. And now, it could be anything from how to be safe around a firearm versus how to, going through basic sex ed versus going through cyber education. And there's a lot of these types of hard conversations that parents get to have about drug use and alcoholism and just everything you can imagine. And so one of the big struggles is kind of when is the right time to talk about some of this stuff with your kids. And the unfortunate answer is there never is really a right time. But it's more of, to talk businessy for a second, it's more of a risk assessment and understanding the risks that your kids might face. If, your household doesn't have any tablets, doesn't have any cell phones, has very limited access to computers, how you train and educate your kids might be a little bit different versus ones that have a phone in every room, or every kid has their own phone. You might have different expectations for them. And so, we kind of generally recommend you cater those discussions around some of the actual risks that your kids face. But even the challenge with that is they go to a friend's house or a relative's house and you don't know what they're necessarily exposed to online or on somebody else's tablet. And so it really comes down to being able to educate them and just kind of help train them up. They can scroll before they can crawl. That is not too far off the unfortunate truth. I've seen babies that cannot crawl, but they have figured out how to scroll on a tablet already. And some of it doesn't get into it in any of these studies in here, but the impact that screen time has on small children, like 1 to 3 or 4 is pretty significant. But we're going to kind of breeze through this one. And so here comes just some of the facts and statistics that I mentioned earlier. So over half of the children surveyed are on the internet after 10 o'clock at night, and they're not doing homework. So this kind of goes to some of those family rules and being able to set expectations with your kids about really what's right, what's not, what's balanced, kind of just have an understanding of or set expectations with how you want the kids to kind of behave in that. So like in every household is different, and our household is a little bit younger. We have 9 and 11, but they don't have unfettered access to really any device. We have one kind of old cell phone that we just call the home phone, and generally is not plugged in and is not in tucked away. But when we leave and go somewhere and one or two of the kids might be at home by themselves, we pull it out and treat it like a traditional landline, which, I couldn't even tell you how many people have those anymore, but it's not a significant number. So like from our perspective, for our family with kids our age, we would never let them be on a device like that after 10 o'clock, not doing schoolwork. But over half of the kids surveyed in this particular group fall into that already. Some more, 10%, oh, come on, catch up with me. 10% admit that they were late to school because they were online too late the night before, and 5% missed school because they were too tired from staying up too late. And one of the biggest stats that I got out of this is that 90% of kids surveyed, this was 171 kids in this particular survey, have their phone, tablet, or a computer in their room, generally implying that they have pretty unfettered access to that type of device. And again, this is just kind of a family conversation because every family is going to do this a little bit differently, even amongst me and Neil and Matt. Neil, if you can remember on average, how old were the kids when they first had like their own phone like this?
Oh man, I am gonna date myself a little bit, but I think that they were probably, pre-10 when they had devices coming out, they had their phones and were, able to call. It staggered out. My oldest is 22, and so she probably had one at 12 or something like that. And then Cameron caught up with her and he got one, and they started off with little prepaid phones that weren't really capable of doing too much. And of course, my youngest got hand-me-down phones, which were way more powerful by the time the older ones had different ones. And so it for me, it staggered out a little bit different because the older kids started with less powerful devices.
Yeah.
But they had tablets and computers, and we're a very techie family, and everybody's got their screens.
How old were you when you got your first cell phone?
Ha! This is really gonna date me. My dad got our very first cell phone was the old Motorola bag phone, and I carried that around in a backpack on my bicycle. And
Awesome.
I would say that I was freshman in high school when that was going on.
Okay.
So,
Matt, if you're still kicking around, do you remember how old you were when you got your first cell phone?
I'd probably say 16. It was it was a Nokia, like the ones you can play Snake on and stuff.
Yep,
Little digital screen. Yep.
Yeah, I got mine
long time ago.
It was, yeah. I got mine when I started driving, and so I think, in that same range, 16 or 17. But for a lot of us and a lot of parents, the first cell phones we got were the bag phones, or were the Nokia 3360 or whatever they were, and you could barely tap out a text message on them. And now the cell phones that the kids have are full-blown computers. And I think we just watched a documentary on Apollo 11 here not too long ago, and the average iPhone today has more computing power than what we sent a man to the moon on. And that's what we have available to our kids, in their hands. And so even, 10, 20 years ago, those expectations for cell phones have just the experience has changed dramatically over the last 10 and 20 years. So Neil kind of mentioned this already with some of the screen time. Google and Android do have the same ones, but some of the recommendations here are to set up simple access controls. And you can use screen time limits to set time limits to say, hey, we're going to turn Instagram off at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or whatever. There's apps that can do that on the phone. There's native tools inside of iOS and Android to do it. Some of the higher end wireless routers that you have from either your internet provider or you bought on Amazon, a lot of those have kind of some screen time limits that you can limit access to Netflix after a specific time to a certain device. The prevent usage in private is kind of another good one that will just kind of encourage things to not necessarily happen behind closed doors. And if there must be a computer in the bedroom, make sure that the screen faces the door. There's some other nice quasi-scary statistics we'll share here in a little bit. The keep devices in a central location and that centralized charging stands are a pretty good idea to help encourage that. so that, when you come home, if you have somewhere you toss all your car keys, set up a little charging station kind of in the central spot of the house where the cell phones end up, the tablets end up, and that kind of helps prevent those tablets from going into the kids' rooms when that might not be what you want. Yeah, we just talked about parental controls. And so, again, more scary statistics, but 37% of kids have accidentally visited a site meant for adults. And the even scarier statistic is 20% of those were searching for the site on purpose, and half of them went all the way through. So even just accidentally searching for something and coming across something on Google or Bing or whatever they're searching with, it's pretty easy for them to kind of land on a site they shouldn't be. And with a third of them purposely searching for something like that, and the majority of them still kind of carrying through to actually finish that visit to a site. Another reason why setting up some of those parental controls is a pretty valuable thing to go through. Both Neil, Matt, and I all have a wide swath of experience with kind of mechanisms to control this. There's ways that you can do it, like with a basic internet kind of filtering service, a technology called DNS. There's a few DNS filters out there that are specifically designed for families that help. It's not 100% foolproof, but it catches 99% of them, that keep adult sites, spam sites, phishing kind of virus stuff, but pornography sites that you might not want the kids exposed to, sites that have specific violence ratings and a few other things. There's lots of DNS filtering controls to try to help filter that type of internet inside your house, in addition to all the screen time limits and apps that we've talked about before. Neil or Matt, from your guys' perspective, have you guys seen an app or a tool like that you've seen work really well, or one that doesn't work at all and a kid can get around with a VPN or something?
Not I.
I've got a couple people that use Disney Circle when it first came out to limit device time and do some of that filtering things. A lot of the newer high-end consumer routers or services from your provider can offer some sort of control and or filtering capability on the router level. It's getting more sophisticated as time goes on, but of course in our field we use some really nerdy things from Cisco to filter DNS and stuff like that, and you can go high end, but most of the time for consumers or end users, it's going to be either done at the higher end router level, or you're going to buy an add-on item like Disney Circle or something like that.
Yeah. So while you're here, Neil, switching slides to this next one here, I want to get your thoughts on this, to create all of your child's passwords for them. And so imagine like a 12 or maybe a 14-year-old in this situation. Create all of your child's passwords for them and require the child to have you input them before you use online accounts or purchasing apps or whatever. And so weigh that from your parent's perspective versus from your cybersecurity perspective.
Oh man, that's a really loaded question. I never did that. I knew my kids' passwords when they were younger. As they got older, things changed a little bit, and they tried to start hiding some of those conversations and whatnot. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, you never share your password. You don't want anybody to know what your stuff is, and it's wrong hands, but we're parents, right? And so we're supposed to know our kids' stuff, and there's a little bit of a line there.
Yeah.
So you say have them input before use of online accounts or purchasing apps. I agree with the purchasing apps. Back in the day, I had all my one-click turn on buy now stuff from Amazon and Microsoft on the Xbox and whatnot. And it was very easy for a kid to go in. And of course, this was 8 years ago, on the Xbox, I say, well, I want to buy this game, and they just hit go, and it downloads it, and buys it, and it charges me $50 because I didn't have a code on it or something. So I did put PIN codes in place for all of my online purchases and app purchases. When my kids use like a shared tablet, it was my Apple ID that was on there, and so they'd have to come and ask me to download or install an app. Again, when Skyla was younger with her phone, I would have to authorize an app install that way. And I could remotely lock her phone too. So that screen time thing would say, you can't use the internet past 10, or you can't do this, or you can lock your phone, and whatnot.
Yep. Yeah, I struggle with this one a little bit too, because the cybersecurity person in me says, no, I'm not going to share my passwords with anybody. But the kids are way different. And so for us, we have passwords of our kids that we know. And as they continue to get older, one of the things that drug my wife begrudgingly into was a password manager. And so some things that we have like shared logins to, like a online bank, for example, we'll have a password that frankly neither one of us know. It's some long string of whatever, but it's in a password manager, and we have that password shared. So we can still kind of dance that line of having a balanced cybersecurity thing where it's not like the first name of our dog plus our address or something really insecure. And so where we're not to this phase yet in our kids' age where they have to have their own passwords. We're getting there though, and that'll be something that we have to kind of confront as a family here pretty soon too. We kind of threw out some social media stuff already, but if can you guys name these apps? Most all of every single one of your kids can. Far right is Snapchat, right? I can't remember the Snapchat logo.
That is correct. Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat. Yeah. So if you look at that third bullet point, more statistics, 30% of children lie about their age to get onto Facebook, and many parents and grandparents help them. And I was actually just fighting this, not with Facebook, but with Google, because Google changed how they did some of their music stuff. And Google Play would let a kid under 13 years old interact with the service, and YouTube Music doesn't. And so from YouTube's perspective, they have YouTube for kids, and if you're under 13, you fall into that realm. And so I'm kind of in this awkward spot where my older one, 11, obviously isn't 13, and Google won't let him use YouTube Music on his own. Even that's not even an app that we can control in the Google Family Link stuff. And it's driving me up a wall. It's so bad that I almost want to switch to Amazon Music back from YouTube Music just because of that problem. And so that's why parents and grandparents help them get onto Facebook and lie about their age specifically so they can get around some of those issues. And so we're not quite there yet. I'm not going to be able to lie about that. But that's one of the main reasons that parents try to do that. I haven't used the Facebook Kids Messenger really much at all. Our boys don't use it, but I know other kids the same age that do have access to the Kids Messenger on Facebook, and that works a little bit different. That helps you actually set up a Facebook account for your child that's under 13, but you have complete control over it in your account. You're able to authorize who they can talk to on Facebook. It's a really restricted version, almost a completely restricted version of Facebook, but it gets them an account, and you specify the contacts that they can talk to, like grandma and grandpa, for example. So a couple things in here. We talked about this with the kids today, is if they have some type of social media presence, to make sure that it's set to private and not to public. This is probably one of the most simple things that you can do to make sure that there's not somebody stalking a child or trying to get information about their whereabouts or where they go to school or where they play soccer or whatever. Just setting their profiles to private and not public helps alleviate just a ton of these issues. Again, we mentioned this already, but we spent some time today kind of reminding the kids that once they post something online, it really is there to stay, even if they want to go delete it or have a disappearing message in WhatsApp or Telegram or Snapchat or any of the ones that can disappear messages. All it takes is somebody to do a screenshot, and it's there forever. Yeah, let your kids know. Posts could be available for everybody, including future employees, colleges, spouses, more likely than not. Social media will not be your friend if you don't treat it kind of with respect as you're growing up. Luckily for most of us as parents, most of the stupid stuff we did wasn't recorded and live streamed and saved on Facebook or YouTube somewhere for generations following us to see. But our kids are faced with a little bit of a different challenge than that, where they a couple of years ago it was the ice bucket challenge, and then it turned into eating Tide Pods, and it's going to be something else dumb that somebody's going to get recorded for, and just kind of having conversations with your kids about, the permanence of some of these things is a really simple but important step to take with them. Stop before you post. Actually, I'm going to go back to that one here. The never share your age, school, address, phone number. We talk a little bit with our boys about the difference between like keeping secrets versus keeping something private. Of course, we don't encourage our kids or anybody's kids to keep secrets from their parents. And so we spend a little bit of time having some conversations about that difference between a secret and something that's private. And so when it comes to social media, a lot of the stuff about kind of your family and the family dynamics are things that you want to keep private. It just kind of goes back to the public versus private profile thing, and really just educating your kids that, this stranger at Miller Park doesn't really need to know your home address. And that really isn't any different on Snapchat or Instagram when they're posting a picture, at the skate park or saying, whatever it is they might be saying. But trying to keep some of that information that can easily identify them to any type of predator, and trying to keep that sort of information private. We talked about photos a little bit already too. Posted photos can reveal too many details. We also touched on geotagging with the kids earlier today. Geotagging is when you take a picture and your phone is going to automatically GPS tag that picture. And so it's really easy for all kinds of applications to get access to that geotag data and be able to figure out where that picture is taken from. Google actually has like a history timeline. If you're a user of any Google service, you can go, I wish I could find a link for it real quick, but there's your history with Google, and it will show you everywhere that you've been in the last month or 12 months or whatever window you tell it. And it is really eye-opening when you see that type of information and recognize the type of data that Google and Facebook has, on us as parents. But as our kids become bigger users of these devices, they're getting that sort of data for all of the kids as well. Most of you guys are familiar with the concept of sexting, text messaging, sexually explicit messages. A lot of this comes back to being able to talk to your kids about, the right pictures that you want to send versus the wrong pictures you want to send, and the type of information you want to share online. I joked with the kids about it today, but I used a grandma analogy that, in the technology side, a lot of the stuff that we do, we need to be able to explain it to grandma, and if grandma can understand it, then we're probably okay. And the same thing goes for something that you want to post online. If your grandma's going to see this picture of you, how is that going to make her feel? And use that as kind of a yardstick when you're talking with your kids about it. Cyberbullying isn't much different than the bullying that some of us may have experienced on playgrounds growing up, except it's a little bit more exacerbated because as you can see in any of the political discussions it seems that people have these days, when you're sitting behind a keyboard, people feel pretty free to say things they might not say in person. And so, again, from generations that didn't grow up with these types of things in our hands, and now our kids have grown up with them in their hands, their expectations and how they interact with these tools are just really different than how we do. And it becomes extremely easy for a kid, whether it's a elementary school, middle school, or high school kid, to be comfortable with this and feel a little bit empowered with the anonymity that comes from being, kind of online and setting up a fake profile, or, kind of going after one of their acquaintances for the way they, look or behave, or, whatever. And so we talked a little bit about, how to have some of those conversations with adults and what to do when you see it happening. Talk to a parent, talk to a teacher, talk to the person that's both being bullied and the bully, and try to, basically take the high road and, use the golden rule. Don't do to others what you don't want to do, have done to yourself. So, some of the symptoms of cyberbullying: anger, depression, frustration. After using any device, they might jump online and see some, direct message they got from somebody that, could kind of upset them. If they completely stop accessing social media, or playing an online game on Xbox or PlayStation, Fortnite is the, hot topic right now, or at least was 6 months ago. And if they just suddenly decide to stop playing Fortnite cold turkey, they probably had a challenge or a problem with, a kid in the game. Speaking of gaming, there are a number of games out there today. And Matt or Neil, do you guys happen to recall? I've said Call of Duty before here already. Do either one of you guys know what Call of Duty is rated?
I actually have it right here in front of me.
Is it M for mature?
Yeah, 17 plus. M for mature for blood, gore, drug reference, intense violence, strong language, and suggestive themes.
Yeah, and I bet I have seen 9-year-olds playing that game. I mean, probably even younger. I mean, if you guys had to pick, what's the youngest kid you've probably seen playing Call of Duty?
If they can hold
5.
Yeah, if they can hold a controller. I've seen 6-year-olds, 5. Yeah.
Yeah. See, and again, this is where kind of some of the family dynamic stuff comes in. But Matt, do me one favor and read me one more time what that M rating on Call of Duty includes.
It includes blood and gore, drug reference, intense violence, strong language, and suggestive themes.
Gotcha. Thank you. And so now, even like as the slide is saying, and now they're doing that online, most likely on Xbox Live or PlayStation or whatever, with somebody that they don't know talking about, what you can only imagine. And so how you let kids access games and what games you let them have access to becomes obviously extremely important. Sometimes it isn't quite as easy as just saying that, well, just because it's rated M for mature, doesn't mean my 15-year-old can't play it. Every kid is going to be a little bit different on the maturity level they can have when they're playing some of these games. Like Fortnite, I can't even recall what the Fortnite age rating is, but it's probably moderately low. It's designed for a different audience than Call of Duty, of course.
It's everyone.
It's everyone, E for everyone. But even Fortnite has weapons and violence, but not quite to the same level Call of Duty, of course. So you can go to the next slide here. 50% of kids are playing violent video games today. And so that definition of violence can be a little bit different because, like I said, in Fortnite, you're using weapons to, kill other people, but it's still rated E for everyone. There is effectively not an age limit on it. So
I'm gonna correct that. I just checked it. It's actually T for teen.
Fortnite is T for teen, not E for everyone.
ESRB. Yeah, I just looked, and it specifically says rated T for teen by ESRB for violence. And that's the only reason. So the shooting and stuff like that, killing.
Gotcha. Well, then I stand corrected, and that makes a little bit more sense. If 50% of kids, I'll bet this number now is probably already like 2 years old, and this is probably before Fortnite, because I know lots of kids that are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that are playing Fortnite when it's a T for teen rated game. And again, some kids are fine with it, and it really isn't a big deal. So you can't always just go straight off the game ratings. It's almost like movie ratings. Sometimes you let a 10-year-old watch a PG-13 movie and not have any problems.
I'm gonna date myself here, Robbie, and say that what was the most graphic game that you could have played when you were a teenager? It's still a super popular series today.
Halo? I don't know.
Halo was Halo was intense for shooting and violence, but Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah.
And I played the original. Finish him. That's right. I played the original Mortal Kombat. I was probably in the age range that we're talking about now when that came out, and my kids have all played it and everything. But I think it's that family dynamic that really helps that. If you're taught, learned, you pay attention, your parents are involved, and you know that this is a game and you don't play it all the time and it's not your entire life. I think that makes a huge difference. But yeah, that was part of that.
Mortal Kombat. No, I was thinking like the first game system we had was the original Nintendo, and it's like Super Mario and Duck Hunt.
Well,
but that was a while ago.
Duck Hunt would be violent because you're shooting.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I don't think they had ratings on games when those times. So
Yeah, I'm not sure they did either. Back to some of these ratings, since I happen to have the slide right here. Early childhood, E is for everyone 10 plus. T is for teen, M is for mature over 17, A is adults only over 18, and RP, I don't think I've ever actually seen that in practice before. But yeah, the ratings on games are a pretty good gauge of what to expect in there. And there is obviously some responsibility in making sure you understand the game and the kid and knowing kind of what they can handle with that.
Got something to add on that, so people understand the mature and the A. As there isn't much adult-only games, parents should understand that mature 17 plus does have nudity in games, just to let you know.
The only one that I can think of like that might be Grand Theft Auto have nudity in games, or what type of game?
The newest, well, I'll just put the newest game out there today, Cyberpunk 2077 is mature 17 plus, and it has nudity in its game, which is very vivid.
Gotcha. Good to know. Cyberpunk 2077, can it be played online?
Not yet. It can be played on a PC and all consoles.
Gotcha. Yeah. So where a lot of kids run into challenges is when they take Fortnite or a Call of Duty or a Halo and then go and play it online. And sometimes when they're playing with their buddies online and talking, they think that's pretty cool. And it can be for kids, but where they rapidly run into problems is when they get exposed to situations that the parents and the kids have zero control over, and they're playing with strangers that might introduce them to new words or new concepts in a manner that might not be the best. That might not be the best for the kid. So some of this really just comes down to coaching your kids to keep online chat relevant to the game. Don't provide personal information. And also keep in mind that a lot of these features can actually be turned off in the game systems. And so like we've actually done that in our Xbox. And so while both of our boys have their own profile on the Xbox so they can play their own games and save their own progress, we don't have Xbox Live. And so we don't let them play any of the games online. And B, we also limit, even though you don't have Xbox Live, you're still able to have, friends in the Xbox platform and whatever. And so we limit those only to friends that we know and can control. And we will only let them chat with friends that they have to be their friends. They can't be strangers effectively. And then their only friends are ones that we've allowed. So that way they kind of get the best of both worlds, that they still can talk to their buddies online, but not to strangers, and it's a pretty controlled thing for us. There's actually a few slides in here about chat rooms, which I don't know how super valid that is anymore. Neil, when's the last time you even heard or thought about a chat room these days?
I can't give you a date and a time. I went from AOL chats back in high school to like IRC relay chats and stuff like that. Now it's group text messages, Facebook group messages, et cetera, et cetera. I guess chat rooms are gone and now it's group chats is what you would consider the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, like WhatsApp, while WhatsApp isn't the biggest in the US, WhatsApp is the biggest messaging platform in the world. And it's a really common spam technique to just take people's phone numbers, put it in a WhatsApp group, and be able to spam message a whole bunch of people. And so some of the challenges with chat rooms and the kind of the intent of the presentation is really, it's not necessarily the tool like a chat room versus WhatsApp or instant message or group chat, but just the fact that they're being exposed in a kind of semi-private situation with a complete stranger who, a parent really has no idea who their kid is talking to. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of exposure they have to situations like that, while at the same time kind of providing them the tools they need to adequately respond if they are in those situations in the future. So I'm going to kind of breeze through some of the chat room stuff. We've talked about safe passwords a few times now. And again, we talked about it with the kids too, but the make it a phrase, the longer the better, is a really important tip. Back in the day, it used to be, well, the most secure password is capital T, lowercase m, comma, and these really super complicated passwords that your just human brain can't remember very well. But both humans have an easier time remembering a phrase, and luckily, computers have a harder time cracking that. And generally speaking, the longer the password, the more secure it's going to be. You don't want to use really simple words like password in your password, but if you have a couple, 3 or 4 words that you can kind of create a phrase with that are more meaningful to you, that will make both a really secure password. It'll be easy for you to remember, which means you're going to use it more often, and it's going to be really hard for a computer to crack. That 8-character minimum isn't really true anymore. That really is getting up to 12 now. Even with a super complex password at 8 characters, I think I heard the most recent data on that you can crack an 8-character password in 12 minutes, and it doesn't matter how complex it is, with the appropriate computing power that you can go buy online now. So 8-character passwords are pretty well gone. Don't use them anymore. And try to move to those passphrases if you can. Apple has done a really good job of almost forcing this 2-factor, what you see down there, the 5th bullet point, I guess. We also call that multi-factor authentication. And what that basically means is your password is something you know. Another factor is either something you have or something you are. So something you are might be like your Face ID or a fingerprint, versus something you have is going to be like a rolling code token. Neil and I have a couple of these. We test all this kind of stuff here. If you can see this little rolling code security tool. We have what's called a soft token on our phones. There's a few different ways to do it, but any chance that you're provided to use that type of second factor, like your cell phone for an SMS message, it is always a really good idea to do that. If you ever have your password stolen, having that 2-factor can absolutely save you from having something like actually catastrophic happen. Neil and I and Matt, to that, for that too, we see this all the time where people have their passwords taken for one reason or another, and they get into their online banking accounts and can transfer money out, or even more nefarious things than that. So if at all possible, use a password phrase, and if at all possible, use 2-factor authentication. Downloads. This really comes down to kind of what your kids are trying to accomplish online. I think Neil earlier today used the example of like a game add-in, or different types of things your kids might go out to the internet try to go download. This is becoming even more of an issue now that all the kids are trying to learn from home with distance learning, and what they're being asked to do online is a lot different than what it has been in the past. And so some of the really basic things to kind of help them understand is really only download stuff from websites or app stores that you recognize. And if it's some funny URL or something doesn't look or feel right, chances are probably pretty high that it's not. And so using simple things like making sure you're using Google or Bing for your search engines. DuckDuckGo is another privacy-based kind of Google alternative that's been working really well. And so use search engines that most of them have some kind of fail-safes in there to make sure they're not going to bad sites. Some simple things like, if you get an email from somebody you don't know, don't open the attachments, don't click on links, things of that nature. Everybody at Hyak at one point or another has worked on one of these types of issues where somebody gets an email that's a phishing email. And what those are is really an attempt from a bad guy to try to elicit your credentials out of you. They want you to think that you got an email from your employer saying, hey, we're making changes to payroll. You need to log in and update your checking account information to make sure you get your direct deposit. And so they click on this link, they get taken to a website that might look like their payroll processor or their company, and they log in with their email address, and now the bad guy has their email password. And so that's a really simple example of phishing, but we see it happen, weekly. And it is a very legit thing. And just because they have access to their email, some people kind of downplay that. But that is almost always where like major data breaches happen, is when somebody gets phished and they've given their network credentials away. Neil, anything to add on the phishing, knowing what you're downloading type stuff?
No, nothing specific. It comes with time to know what you're looking at. I've seen people that are still pretty proficient with things that they'll click an email that look like it came from PayPal or whatnot. And I use the analogy that, if your bank called you or someone called you claiming to be your bank, would you just randomly give them your social security number and information? The answer to that should be no, that you don't know where or who is calling you. Even caller ID nowadays doesn't do any justice for that. We all get those spam calls and stuff about your car warranty and whatnot, but that can apply to other things. But hang up, call the bank back, and then talk to somebody. Same thing as what you were saying, Robbie, is to make sure you're downloading or streaming from Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, places download your game add-ins from trusted app stores and publishers. And if you're a developer, great. You know a little bit more about what you're looking for. You might be looking for add-ons in the code, but just be aware, and it should match your level of what you're doing.
Yep. Moving on a tiny bit, I get on some members of my immediate family and extended family about doing updates, and half of the phones that we pick up or see in the store or somebody's computers that's having problems, they haven't kept them up to date. And so generally speaking, we want to see every device that everybody is using completely up to date, because the rate at which new bugs and flaws and vulnerabilities are released really for every single device out there is just so fast that if you are running a device, an iPhone, Android, whatever, a Windows 10, a Mac, it doesn't really matter. If you're running any type of technology device like that, it is extremely important that they are kept as up to date as possible, and that we have some variety of antivirus on there. Whether it's like the free one from Microsoft is Windows Defender, it's a great free tool. There's a couple good free ones out there, a couple good paid ones out there. There's also lots of bad free ones and bad paid ones. So it's not a bad idea to get a good kind of recommendation and see what some other folks are using, but please make sure that you have an antivirus of some variety running.
And I'm going to add, don't go Google search antivirus software, because you're going to get back nefarious ads in your first listings there, or links that they've paid to get you to download and install, which in themselves can be viruses. So when in doubt, ask somebody that you trust that knows. Reach out to us at Hyak or whoever, but just know what you're downloading and installing.
Yep. Talk to somebody that you know is knowledgeable. Florence has a number of good computer folks in there. Jolene at Florence Tech Solutions, Brett at Coast Computers, any of our guys. Some of it's a little bit of a Ford, Chevy, Dodge type of conversation. Every computer person is going to kind of have their favorite, but have the person that you kind of know and can trust, and they'll be able to lead you to a good solution there. So. Yeah, we talked about phishing emails already. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. There is not a Nigerian prince that's looking to marry you. You haven't won any money. You're not going to get a free timeshare. So these really are sometimes even almost inflammatory methods of trying to get you or even your kids to click on a link. As computers continue to mature and processing power goes up, kind of the latest one right now is what they call a deep fake. And a deep fake is really a video program that is able to take somebody's picture and superimpose it onto somebody else's body in a video. And so they can do it to make stupid memes with, but they can also do it to put, President-elect Biden's face or President Trump's face on somebody else's body doing an act that never really happened. They can do it to you to try to extort money from you. They can do it on a kid. And these types of deep fakes, even just in the last 12 months, have become a much bigger problem. It was actually something identified by the CIA that they were afraid was going to impact the election this year, was the use of deep fakes from different nation state actors. And luckily it wasn't an issue, but it is a really big phishing attempt where somebody can send an email and say, hey, we have a video of you doing this, we've taken over your computer and we have you on your webcam doing whatever. And sometimes they can even have one of these deep fake videos if they're really having a targeted attack. And so it's just really important to kind of understand what those phishing emails look like. And really none of them are ever going to be valid, and your best bet's almost always to delete them all. So just got to be really aware of what's coming into your inbox as a parent, and know that the stuff that you guys see, if your kids have an email account, they're probably getting much the same thing. Teach your kids how to recognize these phishing scams too. That's of course super important. Another thing that we rarely see done effectively is good quality backups. You know, some of us think that Apple's just trying to extort us for money to up our iCloud storage, and we don't want to pay the 99 cents or the $2.99 a month. Google does the same thing. However, it's helping back up your phone. It's backing up your pictures. And, you know, I think speaking for all three of us on the phone here, we've all been in a situation where we've lost a device that hasn't been backed up. And we have also lost devices that we have had completely backed up. And I can tell you that when I back up a laptop and I use the correct kind of cloud storage solutions with Google Drive or OneDrive or whatever, I have zero concerns about losing my tablet or losing my cell phone or having to get dropped in the toilet or a lake or whatever, because I know that all my data is backed up. And so as your family start taking more pictures and storing all that stuff online, it becomes extremely important that all of that data is backed up. And in addition to that, almost creating like a virtual safety deposit box for some of your family documents. You know, you want to make sure these are stored safely too, but having copies of like your car titles or your homeowner's insurance policies in electronic format. So, you know, if heaven forbid you guys had a house fire, something to that effect, you would be able to have a lot of the documents that are important to your family, at least have scanned copies and have, you know, your insurance policy number or your driver's license number or whatever the case may be. Neil, any crazy backup stories or PTSD from trying to recover a failed backup that you want to share?
Yeah, before cloud storage was readily available, I had a laptop that I had all of my firstborn's baby pictures on, and the drive failed, and I didn't practice what I teach. And you know, that was right when digital photography was just coming about. And I can say that I don't have very many baby photos of my firstborn. So it is very crucial that you're backing up your data. I pay Apple the $2.99 a month. I'm up in that next tier of storage and stuff like that. I have all my photos go up there. My phones are backed up. It works great, especially when you get a new device. I don't have to worry about it. And then for PCs and data like that, I'm a big OneDrive fan for Microsoft, but Google Drive. Just make sure, like you were talking about, Robbie, that if you're storing documents up there that are important, password protect those Word documents or PDFs, store them encrypted someplace. Don't put them in a family shared drive. Make sure they're in a single kind of a vault location that's your own personal one, unless you know somebody or trust a person that's there. Just keep in mind the weakest link is always the person for the most part. So yeah, that's my bad backup story.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate one, man. I feel for you.
On a side note, a real quick other one that ended up positive. There's a lot of recovery services out there today that if a drive fails, they can rebuild them. I had a couple that went to Hawaii. They had a backup of their stuff. That backup got damaged. They lost all of their wedding photos. And so it was either, you know, fly to Hawaii and recreate the wedding again, or pay the $1,000 fee to get the drive recovered. And they opted to pay the $1,000 fee, but they did get all their photos back. But, you know, that's another trip someplace that you could have spent if
Yeah,
you
exactly.
had it backed up correctly. So
yeah, $3 a month is pretty cheap insurance for that.
Correct. Yeah. Just use common sense.
Yep. Yeah, we're in the same boat for our family. We pay the Google version of that, and both my Android and my wife's iPhone back up to Google Photos pretty much in real time as soon as they get to Wi-Fi. And so all of the pictures get taken off of our phones and rolled up into Google Photos, and all backed up there. So either one of us can lose our cell phone and, you know, or drop it in the lake or whatever, and not worry about actually losing any of our photos. So that's been working pretty well for us. Plus, we get the little smart Google display and have the rotating pictures on there. That seems to be a pretty big hit. So, all right, just to kind of recap a few things here. There's no easy button for this. There's no crystal ball to be able to figure out what's going to happen with all this. But I guess the moral of the story is just talk to your kids, do it early, and make sure that you guys are having, sometimes they're kind of hard and awkward conversations. They're not always easy. And we talked about the age ratings here, which is a little bit more applicable to some of the video game stuff. We talked about passwords. There's going to be some spots where you guys want to make sure that you're sharing those passwords with your kids or know your kids' passwords so you're able to access some of the stuff that they're trying to do. Talk about some of the consequences of posting photos online or sending photos to strangers that you might not want your grandma to see. We talked a little bit about cyberbullying. And some backup and a bunch of other stuff. So I haven't seen any questions from a Q&A come through here yet. Neil, did you see any that popped in here yet?
I haven't seen any questions yet. I actually just posted it to ask if anybody had any questions to go ahead and get them in there now.
Perfect. All right, Matt, you still here with us? Anything you wanted to add, being a parent with some girls, and anything you've learned that you wish you could pass on to yourself 10 years ago?
Just definitely talk to your kids, man. The more you talk to your kids and, don't hide stuff from them and know that they can come to you, I think, you'd be okay.
Yep. How about you, Neil? Anything you wish you could tell yourself 10 years ago or 22 years ago?
It is what Matt said. Talk to them, be involved, share things, make sure they keep showing you. I attempted to take the forceful, you're not going to have a phone or a Facebook account kind of thing. And the first thing they did was figure out how to get VPN access at school, created a Facebook account that I did not know they had with a new free Gmail account, and then blocked me from being able to see that profile. And so they had an account for months before one of their friends accidentally tipped me off. Yep. And then after that, we had a conversation, and there's things that you can control and there's things you can't. And I'd rather see it than not know about it and at least be watchful of what's happening.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we just got one comment here, but no questions. So I want to thank everybody for their time. And Neil and Matt, thank you guys for your time too. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at Hyak. And until next time, thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks.